have agreed to cut U.S. tariffs on China from 57% to 47% in exchange for Beijing actions in the fentanyl trade and pause on rare earth export curbs. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a new rule linking student loan forgiveness to his immigration agenda, barring borrowers who work for nonprofits that do not cooperate with federal immigration policies from debt cancellation. U.S. President Donald Trump had ordered the U.S. military to immediately resume testing nuclear weapons for the first time in 33 years. This comes just after Russia's announcement of successful nuclear tests. Brazilian officials have reassured that events linked to the upcoming COP30 climate summit will be held safe following a deadly police crackdown in Rio that has left at least 132 people dead in the country's deadliest operations. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi have vowed to strengthen bilateral ties amid global trade challenges during their summit at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meetings. Afghanistan and Pakistan have agreed to restart peace talks in Istanbul at Turkey's request after earlier discussions collapsed, according to sources' statements on Thursday. This comes amid border clashes that have killed dozens this month as tensions rise between them. Hurricane Melissa has left a trail of destruction across the Caribbean, killing at least 25 people in Haiti and 4 in Jamaica. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced that the United States is prepared to provide immediate humanitarian aid to Cuba. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has ordered to the army to confront any Israeli incursion in the country's south after an Israeli raid killed a municipal worker. Aoun has said that the military must defend Lebanese territory and protect civilians, according to a statement from the presidency in Beirut. Now we start this hour with India. According to India's Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randir Jaiswal, India has said that it remains actively engaged with the United States to conclude a long-awaited bilateral trade agreement. Addressing reporters in New Delhi, Jaiswal has said that discussions with Washington are continuing in a positive and constructive manner, as both sides seek to finalize the deal. Let's listen into the statement made during the conference.
India-US bilateral trade that we are engaged in, we continue to remain engaged with the US side to conclude a trade deal, and these discussions are continuing. On the specific questions of, of tariff, etc., I would refer you to Ministry of Commerce.
The update comes after U.S. President Donald Trump's trade diplomacy spree at the APEC and ASEAN summits, where Washington has sealed the trade deals with Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, and Thailand, while signaling progress with India. Meanwhile, India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has stated that earlier this month that talks are cordial but cautious, stressing that no agreement will be signed unless India's farmers, fishermen, and MSMEs are fully protected. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Professor, what do you think, what is taking US and India so long to reach an agreement?
Not too long. It was first announced in February, and the discussions started. There were 5 or 6 rounds. And obviously, if you want some obstacles, one is that the trade is very complicated as such. This is a big nation. We are talking about $190 billion. That was the estimation back in February, and now the plan is to go to $500 billion. It will be one of the biggest exchanges in the world. I mean, comparable probably only with China United States. This will be the second biggest in volume trade deal. But also some tension arise because, well, first of all, India continues to buy Russian oil and gas, and something which Donald Trump made very clear that he is not happy with that, and that's why the tariffs were imposed as well. But then there was a step from India saying that they will reduce, and they did reduce the amounts of Russian oil and gas being bought by India. And also, as you mentioned already, there needs to be some protection, some safety for various categories, sectors. For example, like farmers need to be protected, especially because when you increase the trade, then obviously domestic producers are a little bit unhappy because yes, if you buy cheap products from abroad, then the domestic producers need to have some sort of protection, and that goes primarily to the farmers. Obviously, cheap products, mostly agricultural products from abroad, will affect the domestic farmers, both ways, by the way. That apply not only to India, but also to United States. I'm sure the products the agricultural products in India are very good, they're excellent quality, and they may also kind of challenge the producers in United States. So, but they go well. By the way, the message is very positive today. What we hear from the Ministry of External Affairs is that we might have the first tranche of the deal agreed very soon. The deadline was posed as October, November, and we are just in between October and November. So we might have in a couple of weeks already the first part of the agreement signed, which again, it doesn't matter when exactly. I'm sure the trade goes on anyway. A lot of volumes are exchanged anyway. And somehow the two governments want to put that into kind of a framework, and which is important because it creates a legal framework with some sort of protection, some sort of guarantees, so that if companies are not happy with their counterpart, they can refer to official bilateral between two governments deal, and that will obviously open new opportunities. So I'm very positive. It will happen. No matter when the deal is signed, the trade will increase, and that's not because governments say so, but because this is the nature of the trade. Buyers and sellers are looking for the best deals. India can sell and can buy so much. It is the biggest population in the world already, with more purchasing power over time. Obviously, India is an excellent market for American goods, but vice versa. America is also a big market for some modern technology, for example, and other Indian goods. So I'm very positive on this. What government says is good because they show commitment and they are very positive in a way, you know, and I'm sure this announcement also came on the day when we hear from Donald Trump after his visit to South Korea. He signed such a deal with Japan, with South Korea, with China at the airport, Busan in South Korea. Prior to that, he was in Malaysia and signed also similar deals with Thailand, Malaysia, possibly soon with Philippines, with Cambodia. So it is a week of many U.S. trade agreement all over the region in Southeast Asia and East Asia. So obviously this announcement comes from India because the question comes, where does India stand in those series of United States signed deals? And the message is quite positive. It's coming. We are putting the final touches, and it will happen very soon.
Right, and building on that answer, what safeguards are necessary for for India and also U.S. to protect their domestic industries, and how do you think, how will India balance its domestic industries while protecting their domestic industries?
Yeah, I'm a very kind of a free market economist, and I prefer not to see much intervention from governments. So for that, I'm a bit reluctant to go that way. Usually what governments do is give subsidies to their own producers. Basically, they pay some of the costs, they reduce taxation, they try to stimulate domestic. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Every government does it, not only India. So it's a very normal way to subsidize the own producers. In other words, for their final products to become competitive somehow, to become cheaper than those that could be imported from other countries. So one way to do that is through the domestic subsidies to the producers, and the other way, which I also don't like very much, is the protectionism. Somehow to impose quota, some limitations to imported goods from abroad. But again, when we talk about free trade agreement, those needs to, like in the European Union, there are no such things as limitations, quotas, tariffs. It's absolutely free in the European Union to trade whatever quantity anybody wants. But between India and United States, it will be not a free trade, it will be mostly bilateral trade agreement. And exactly, that trade agreement will have restrictions, it will have protection for domestic producers. Obviously, because also the markets are quite different, the producing price is quite different. So there will be protectionisms, but limited, and there will be domestic subsidies, but also limited. So in other words, the farmers shouldn't worry. I'm sure both governments, India and United States, will take care of their farmers. So that their business continues and not ruined. But on another hand, everybody needs to realize when such competition arises, they need also to do better. They need to offer higher quality of products on a reasonable price. Otherwise, if you produce too expensive goods, and if these goods don't match the quality of the global standards, if you can buy those from abroad in a better quality or cheaper, then your own products become more vulnerable. And people, producers realize that, manufacturers, farmers do realize that. And effectively, they improve their quality of their products, but also try to put limits on the cost of production.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Professor, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, Russia has launched a massive overnight strike on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, killing at least 3 people, including a 7-year-old child. Ukrainian President Zelensky has stated that Russia has launched over 650 drones and 50 missiles targeting key energy facilities across the country. Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko has condemned the attack, saying Moscow's goal is to plunge Ukraine into darkness as winter approaches. Regional officials have confirmed deaths in Zaporizhia and Vinnytsia. With multiple injuries in both regions, Ukraine's air defense systems have intercepted most of the missiles and drones, but several hits caused significant damage. In response, Ukraine is calling for more air defense systems and tougher sanctions on Russia. The attacks have led to nationwide power restrictions, with disruptions to heating and water supplies in several areas. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, how effective is Ukraine's current air defense system in countering these large-scale drone and missile attacks?
Well, I'll say 95% of the drones are gunned down by the air defense system, but 5% still can penetrate the airspace and hit, unfortunately, some limited targets. So we see this every day, and somehow the news usually reports the casualties, they come first, which is very unfortunate that 3 people, and one of them 7-year-old girl in Vinnytsia city was, actually she suffered injury and then she died in the hospital afterwards. And 2 persons were killed in Zaporozhye when the hit on the electric facilities came. So these are the numbers of casualties. They come first in the news. But behind that is the air defense, which protected 95% of the other drones not to hit their targets. So obviously nothing is perfect. So let's put it this way. Ukraine needs more air defense system and better ones. And that's why President Zelensky and other officials continue to demand additional military support, but also all other support, financial and other support from partners in the world. So the support for Ukraine should continue so that even those limited penetrations of drones into Ukrainian airspace are reduced to absolute minimum. That's one, but also it shows that the Russian strategy here, and it has been exactly the same before the first winter, before the second winter, and now before the third winter, is to target energy infrastructure. So basically they would like to make the life of the civilians in Ukraine miserable with those constant power shortages, power cuts. And the winter is coming. The weather is very cold already in Ukraine. And energy cuts also mean more cold in the apartments, and people are not happy with that. So it's a nasty strategy of the Russian military, which is against any rules of war, which is against any norms, against the Geneva Conventions, that they should fight the combatant, the military objects only, and not the civilian. But we hear a lot of civilian casualties, a result of this illegal and inhuman Russian military tactics to hit energy infrastructure. By the way, we don't hear the opposite. Ukrainian hits in Russia are primarily 99% military. Very little aerops here and there, but mostly what we hear from Ukrainian successful hits in Russia. These are proper military targets. These are airports or large amount of storage space for ammunition, and oil and gas refineries, which is the primary source for the war. Russia is exporting, as I said, oil and gas. So all of those targets that Ukrainians are hitting in Russia are military targets. But I'll say the majority of the targets in Ukraine hit by Russia are civilians. Some of them absolutely, they are children, kindergarten, parks, apartment, building blocks, 100% civilian targets. So that suggests who is fighting whom and who is defending against whom. Very clearly, who is violating international law? Obviously the Russian Federation. And who is defending its territory? Obviously Ukraine. There is absolutely no doubt about it.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for joining us and sharing that insight and staying with us throughout our news. Thank you. Now we move on to U.S. Secretary of War. U.S. Secretary has stated that Pete Hegseth met his Malaysian counterpart, Muhammad Khalid Noordin, in Kuala Lumpur today during the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting. The two ministers have signed a memorandum of understanding and discussed military cooperation. The high-level defense meetings will run until November 1st, with other ministers, including India's Rajnath Singh, expected to attend. This is what both of the leaders have shared.
All of us will witness the signing of a memorandum of understanding on defense between the two countries, which signify a more closer relationship between Malaysia and the United States.
We share a lot of values. We share a great history. Our leaders share affinity with each other, which translates to our relationship as well. And now our militaries are going to have an opportunity to cooperate even more robustly than they do already, which is something we very much looking forward to, given the capabilities of the Malaysian military, quite capable, practical partner. We share the pursuit of an open and free South China Sea, Indo-Pacific, and this kind of partnership signals our commitment to that.
Now we move on to United States. In the United States, National Guard troops will remain in Washington, D.C. through at least February. The order, originally set to expire at the end of November, has been extended by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Nearly 2,400 troops are currently stationed in the capital, a deployment costing about $1 million a day. This move comes just weeks after Washington, D.C. officials sued the Trump administration, calling the presence of troops an involuntary military occupation. A federal judge in California had earlier ruled that a similar deployment to Los Angeles was illegal, though that decision does not directly apply to Washington. The extension marks another step in Donald Trump's growing use of federal forces to curb crime in major U.S. cities, including Chicago and potentially San Francisco, Portland, and New York. Now for this discussion, we welcome Robinder Sachdev. He's the author of Trumpotopia, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Robinder Sachdev, for joining us again. Good to see you. As yesterday we were discussing that you stated that there's a revolution going on in U.S. and now looking at this, how does this prolonged deployment of National Guard in U.S. cities reflect on the government's respect for civil liberties during this uprising?
Thank you. A pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
It is not about respect for civil liberties. I think if you talk to the Trump and the MAGA people, they'll rather say it's about safety and security of the citizens of the country. They believe that left and socialist elements are out there to create disruptions in the country in various aspects, for which the federal government has to take some stern and immediate actions. The key action which they find and with which they are going ahead is to deploy the National Guard within their cities. In fact, from January 1, I think there is a plan that every state in the United States, there will be a quick reaction force of 500 National Guards. Right now, these guards are being sent mostly to, let's say, Democrat-leaning states and cities. But January onwards, it would be blanket. All 50 states in the United States would have a contingent, a so-called or a quick reaction force. Through this, Trump is signaling, and that's what his base wants, a strong position, a strong stance, strong action on law and order, illegal immigration, and crime. So this is part and parcel of the agenda of the Trump administration. And as to the revolution, which I was saying and which I do say, this is part of that revolution. That American cities should be completely safe, no allowance given to any rule breakers, so to say. And if needed, the might and the shine and the overwhelming power of the US military should be used to tackle these elements. In fact, at times, the Trump administration has even said that there is an invasion, if you may remember, regarding the illegal immigrants coming in from the Mexico border and also the drugs. So there are various views: an invasion, socialist communists out, illegal immigrants taking over our country. So it's a mix of all of these things, and high crime because of many illegal immigrants. That's the reason said to be. This is what is leading Trump administration to push ahead with deploying National Guards all across the country or wherever they are, the matter comes to their light. Yes, they are facing legal challenges, but they will try to appeal to the next level of a court or the next level of a court, reaching up to the Supreme Court. In some cases, in the local and high courts, they may lose out, they may step away. But the broad pattern is that the Trump administration has decided and is pushing ahead with deploying the might of the military within America.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this region now. U.S. President Donald Trump has declared victory over what he calls the climate change hoax. following remarks by Bill Gates suggesting that global warming would not bring about the end of civilization. In a post on Truth Social, Trump has claimed that he had won the war on the climate change hoax, praising Gates for what he called a courageous admission. In a memo this week, the Microsoft co-founder has said that climate change would have serious effects but would not cause humanity's demise, arguing that innovation in poverty reduction could help the world adapt. Gates has also acknowledged criticism over his carbon footprint, but said that progress in clean energy and emission cuts gives reason for cautious optimism. Trump, a longtime climate skeptic, has rolled back multiple green policies since returning to office in January, after a campaign heavily backed by big oil donors. The president's remarks drew swift reactions from environmental groups, warning that minimizing climate risks could undermine global efforts to curb the emissions. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Rabinder Sachdev. He's the author of Trumpotopia, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for staying with us. Sir, maybe you have mentioned this in your writing in Trumpotopia, but how does Trump's framing of climate change as a hoax shape his political base as well as influence on U.S. environmental policy? And what do you think, what does Trump's response to Bill Gates' comments reveal about his approach?
See, Trump's big picture view with respect to, let's say the environment also within the US is driven by a market approach, in a sense that he believes that the markets, quote unquote, rather free markets, would balance out things. That is one. Secondly, yes, regarding the issue of climate change, Trump has been either you can say a denier or a non-believer in that what is happening on planet Earth is not driven as much by humanity or the actions of humanity, but is driven by, let's say, forces beyond planet Earth. Now, what Gates has said has definitely given Trump a cause to celebrate and say that, he has been right. However, if you see what Gates is saying, Gates is putting out a very nuanced view. As you also said, Gates has said that, let's say there are these three big issues facing humanity: climate change, disease, and poverty. In Gates' view, climate change is not such a great danger that it could lead to the complete elimination of the civilization. But in his view, disease or some future disease could have that potential sooner. Look back, COVID. Secondly, also poverty. So, Gates is putting forth a nuanced view. Also, what Gates is saying, and to that I do partially also agree, he says that the investments which have been made in the cause of climate change and various efforts, various plans, various schemes, too much good money has gone down without commensurate impact or results. That is, yes, what Gates is saying, money should be, and he's talking about carbon, the carbon footprint, etc., carbon emissions to be reduced and all. But his point is also that much money is being invested in schemes which are outlandish, and therefore he's saying that philanthropists and governments should not put all their money or majority or as much of their money into the climate change projects, but should also put their money, philanthropy money, into disease and poverty reduction, especially because the US government, the USAID, right, which would typically be funding such projects on poverty and health and disease prevention, that whole spigot has been turned off. So Gates' view, I think, is nuanced, but yes, he does seem to be saying, he is saying that climate change is not such an imminent danger to the civilization itself as compared to disease and poverty. So therefore, the monies which have been dried up in disease prevention and poverty alleviation should be pumped back in, and philanthropists should divert their money somewhere here. The big picture overall would be that Okay, agreed, climate change is not an immediate danger to civilization. But if you look the past 2 years, or 3 years, or especially this year, every year, events driven by Mother Nature are causing bigger and bigger havoc across the world. The rains, the floods, okay, keep aside the typhoons and hurricanes like in Jamaica yesterday, they are maybe different. But if you look like, let's say, Pakistan, 1/3 the nation was flooded. Right, you look Europe, you look anywhere in the world, these major changes which are happening, which have never occurred earlier, how can they be explained? Okay, the question then comes, how much of these changes which are happening are driven by human contributions to carbon emissions? I think the jury is out there, or rather, this whole debate has now opened up uh, this debate. I think Bill Gates' essay has opened up this debate now, and the jury will be out. There will be a lot of discussions, but bottom line, I would think that we should keep in mind Gates is not saying that climate change is hoax. He's saying climate change, too much money has been going into climate change programs. Lesser money should go there. More money should now go into disease, health, and poverty reduction, because there, the traditional monies which were there from the US government, especially the US aid and others, had dried up.
Very insightful indeed. Thank you for shedding light on the behind the scenes of all of this. Thank you very much, Rupinder Sachdev, for joining us and sharing that insight as an author of Trumpotopia. Now we move on to our next news. As California prepares for a crucial vote on Proposition 50 this November 4th, political scientist Sarah Sadhwani, who served on the state's independent commission, offers insight into the stakes of the redistricting effort. If passed, Proposition 50 would replace the current congressional map, tipping the balance in favor of Democrats in 5 districts. Let's listen in.
Here in California, we have an independent redistricting commission, which is completely separate from the state government. And we are tasked with drawing district lines for Congress. Here in California, we have 52 seats. So that means we drew 52 different districts. This map is actually the congressional map that me and my colleagues drew from the commission. There is a very real attempt to rig this election nationally. Californians do not have to stand by and take the bullying of this threat from the president and from other states. They can respond, and Prop 50 does so in the most democratic way possible. This is not the governor just moving forward with new maps. This is the governor going back and asking Californians, if they want to take a break from our independent process in order to fight back.
In Los Angeles, canvassing teams are actively working together to support for a dramatic referendum that could reshape California's electoral map. Voters are being asked to approve a measure that would amend the state's constitution, redrawing boundaries to create 5 districts favorable to Democrats. Let's listen in.
I'm actually not a fan of gerrymandering, but this is a special time, and special time requires special actions. If we don't regain the power of Congress, if Democrat does not regain the power of the Congress, I cannot imagine what will happen to the rest of